Committee on Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies of the Senate Committee on Appropriations will come to order. I want to start by, again, thanking my ranking member, Senator Moran, for the great partnership we've had. We are looking forward to writing yet another bipartisan CJS bill, and hopefully we will get started on that soon. I want to welcome today's witnesses, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, former Senator Bill Nelson. We still think about you as in the family here, and NSF Director Seturaman Panchanathan. I'm getting better, right? Affectionately known as Dr. Panch, to discuss their agency's fiscal year 2025 budget requests. Thank you both for being here today. And thank you, Senator Nelson and your team, for coordinating the visit with Artemis II astronaut Christina Cook, who was in New Hampshire, and anyone who can keep a room full of fifth graders engaged for over 40 minutes is a great emissary for NASA. So we really appreciated her visit, and I'm sure had a number of wannabe astronauts in that room after she was there. President Biden's fiscal year 2025 budget requests for NASA and NSF would take steps in the right direction. The request includes $10.18 billion for NSF, which is an increase of $1.12 billion, or 12.4% above fiscal year 2024 enacted. For NASA, the request is $25.4 billion, which is an increase of $509 million, or 2% above the 24 enacted level. However, as Administrator Nelson, you and I discussed, I do have some concerns about the budget. I'm particularly concerned about the cut to NASA heliophysics for the third year in a row, especially since the next heliophysics decadal will be released later this year. And of course, as you know, the University of New Hampshire is a leader in heliophysics research, including leading the HelioSwarm mission. I can point to the geomagnetic storm that we had last week to underscore how important our understanding of the sun really is. And fortunately, we didn't see any real damage as the result of that storm, but we know that those storms can interfere with satellite systems, with GPS, with radio communications, and studying the sun gives us much better understanding of what the impacts could be. So it's also hard to overstate the effect of the Fiscal Responsibility Act caps on your agencies. We were forced to cut nearly $1 billion from critical science agencies in the FY24 bill and struggled to meet the high expectations to continue to invest in the Artemis mission and the hugely popular CHIPS and Science Act. So we've seen reduced investments in innovation and space exploration. Those investments are through NSF and NASA really drive our economic competitiveness. They inspire the next generation of STEM leaders. And I worry that underinvesting in our nation's future, especially in scientific innovation, will be challenging as we think about our future competitors. So whether developing the future of artificial intelligence or lunar space, NASA and NSF are on the cutting edge of technological innovation and instrumental in training the next generation of scientists, innovators, teachers, and technicians, in particular in the STEM fields that will define economic growth and national security for decades to come. And I think we all understand on this committee, I know you both do, that we can't take our continued leadership in innovation and technology for granted. Our global competitors, especially China, are not waiting idly by. They're investing heavily in scientific and technological innovation. Earlier this month, China launched a mission to the dark side of the moon, which demonstrates an impressive technological capability. Both NASA and NSF drive us onward through curiosity-driven inquiry and exploration, and they ensure that the foundation for the future in fields like AI and space exploration is built in the United States. It's imperative that we lead, not just keep pace, which is why I continue to be a staunch supporter of both NASA and NSF. And with that, let me recognize my ranking member, Senator Moran.
Chair Shaheen, thank you very much. Thanks for your cooperation in this setting and our other deliberations and work on the CJS Appropriations Subcommittee. I look forward to, again, having a successful opportunity for us to advance causes that we both believe in and that are important to the country. And welcome to NASA Administrator Nelson and to Director Panchanathan. We're delighted to have you back in front of our committee. I think it's appropriate that both of you are here at the same time. While you have different missions and different responsibilities and opportunities, the outcome of what each of you do benefits the country in very similar ways. The President's budget of $1.1 billion increase for NSF and a $500 million increase for NASA. While these increases are significant, given the fiscal responsibility spending caps, they remain a challenge. We did the best that we could do with the numbers that we had for both of your agencies in FY24, and I'm committed to doing that again. That challenging allocation last year led to some tough decisions, but in my view, this subcommittee, the full committee, and the Senate and Congress were able to protect many pivotal programs and missions, including Senator Nelson, Administrator Nelson, the Artemis program. Artemis will cement a new air and space exploration for the United States. There are 16 diverse Kansas suppliers that are supporting Artemis 1 mission, and many more suppliers will be helpful in support future Artemis missions. Ryan Hernandez, Administrator Nelson, who you met when we visited DJ Engineering in Wichita, said at a press conference in which you were participating, and this is what he said: I got goosebumps right now to be just to be a part of the Artemis program and show off what we're able to do for NASA. Artemis is not only important to our aerospace manufacturing workforce, but it's an inspiring opportunity for the next generation. And that's very important for our national economy and our national security. As Senator Shaheen said, China is a threatening adversary. Territorial land grabs on the lunar surface is making significant strides in their own space program. Over the past several years, we have laid groundwork for the United States to remain the leader in the world space domain. But the outcome of that battle is not certain. It's imperative that we continue to build upon the foundation, which will ultimately move us beyond returning to the moon and on toward new goals, such as landing astronauts on Mars. As we approach an Artemis II launch, I look forward to hearing today an update on the mission and how the U.S., the United States, will maintain our leadership in space. NASA's influence extends beyond space exploration. It drives innovation, education, and economic growth, which can also be said for the National Science Foundation. A critical component of maintaining our nation's aerospace and aviation leadership is advanced manufacturing. And Dr. Panchanathan, I appreciate the conversation we had just before this hearing began. I would highlight for my colleagues on the committee that the chairwoman of the Commerce Committee and I have introduced education workforce legislation dealing with advanced manufacturing, and I bring it to your attention for your consideration. Advanced manufacturing combines technology and craftsmanship to create economic growth and high-paying jobs, while also helping us to outcompete China in terms of efficiency and productivity. Institutions like Wichita State and Pittsburgh State University, which the NSF director visited last year, are at the forefront of advanced manufacturing and materials science, driving innovation and competitiveness. This hearing, I hope, will explore how we maximize the impact of federal funding, encourage collaboration among agencies, academia, and private sector, and importantly, inspire future generations of science and technology to make certain investments are robust and fiscally responsible. I'm committed to working with both of you, both of our witnesses, to ensure the nation outcompetes all others in exploration, discovery, and innovation. And I would say to both of you, what you are doing is a noble calling. Our country desperately needs your agencies to be successful. Our committee needs to do what it can do to be helpful in that outcome. But we face tremendous challenges in our world today, and what happens in your departments and agencies are hugely important to have the success that we can have. So I wish you well, and we're here to help, but today we'll hear what your requests are and how we can be that helpful. Thank you both.
Thank you very much, Senator Moran. And we will now hear from our witnesses. Administrator Nelson, will you begin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the fact that you are very legitimately an expert in heliophysics, these times must be particularly exciting to you. Not only the big solar storm that just occurred, but also the alignment of the moon and the Earth and the sun into a total eclipse that a good part of America was able to see. It's the first total eclipse that I had been in. I went to Cleveland, and it's a phenomenon that you just don't forget. Suddenly the Earth is turning dark in the middle of the day, and the temperature is dropping rapidly, and at total eclipse, things are dark. And so thank you for your expertise in heliophysics.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't want anybody to think I'm an expert. I believe in lowering expectations, but I'm certainly an admirer.
And Senator Moran, I just, as you were talking, I want to recall that one of the finest space museums is located in Hutchinson, Kansas. And I had no idea. When I was out there visiting with you, it's extraordinary. And further to the south in Oklahoma, in Weatherford, Oklahoma, is another extraordinary space museum. That one, as a result of General Tom Stafford, the Gemini, Apollo 10, and Apollo-Soyuz astronaut who just recently passed away. One of the great treasures of America. And he has left a legacy there, not unlike your museum in Kansas, that is a great benefit to follow the lead of the National Air and Space Museum here.
Your comments are very, very welcome, especially the first half of what you had to say. But I would tell you that while you must have arranged a call for Senator Shaheen, at some point in time, not too long ago, the astronauts for Artemis called as a group, and the beginning of that conversation was, you do know, Senator Moran, that you have the best space museum in the world in Kansas. That was also a very refreshing call. Thank you.
And I am delighted to be here with Dr. Ponch. And what the two of you said is absolutely true. Between the two agencies, we have a good bit of the federal government's research and development. This is critical for our future. And we know what you've been through, the constraints that you had to put on the budget for 24 and 25, against the artificial ceiling of a debt ceiling that had to be raised so that the government would not go into default. And in order to get the votes to pass that, you had to agree to compromises. And some of those compromises were the reduced levels that are now affecting our two agencies. So much so that it's almost $5 billion less in NASA over those 2 years, 24 and 25. And when you come into, as we've both been talking here about science, that is an effect of almost $2 billion over those 2 years, $1 billion a year, just in science. And so Senator Kennedy and I were talking about Southern colloquialisms. When you got a 5-pound potato sack and you got 10 pounds of potatoes that you want to have, but you only got a 5-pound sack, you can't get everything done. And that's what we're facing on this fiscal year 25 and what we faced last year on fiscal year 24 budget. We can't get everything done, and therefore I've had to make some uncomfortable choices. Some of those choices we can go into detail, Mars sample return, OSAM, those missions had to be scaled back because something had to be scaled back. The rest of NASA, with the resources that you give us, we are very privileged. I am very privileged to try to offer some kind of leadership to a bunch of wizards, and they really do impossible things. The James Webb Telescope, the hitting the asteroid and moving it, the grabbing and sucking up the sample from another asteroid, the needle-nosed jet that's going to fly at the end of this year, supersonic, and it's not going to have that loud sonic boom. I can go on and on. The daily science that goes on the International Space Station, going back to the moon in order to be able to go to Mars. And that's what we're engaged in. And thank you for the opportunity to come and share this with you.
Thank you very much, Administrator Nelson. Dr. Panch.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Shaheen, Ranking Member Moran, and members of the committee. It's truly an honor to do this with you, Administrator Nelson, and we always enjoy working with each other, not only in terms of our partnership, but doing this hearing together too. So I really appreciate your partnership. In 1950, the National Science Foundation was established to continue the nation's investments in science and engineering that had begun during World War II, to explore what Vannevar Bush described as the endless frontier, so that we might continue to unlock the secrets of our world and the universe, and in doing so strengthen our economic and national security. 74 years later, we are surrounded by advancements that have been made possible by NSF investments in people and ideas. The internet, smartphones, wireless technologies, 3D printing, Doppler radar, barcodes, nanoscale science, kidney exchanges, robotics, CRISPR, and MRI technologies, even the magic school bus, were all supported by NSF. Hundreds of thousands of researchers, entrepreneurs, and STEM educators are supported by NSF every year, and countless startups have spun off from NSF's investments. Millions of people, from elementary school students who are inspired by the promise of STEM, to those already in the workforce and are looking to acquire new skills for jobs in emerging industries, are touched by NSF every year. When we look at the early investment in an idea that revolutionizes an industry and yields incredible profit, we call that a wise investment. NSF continues to be an extremely wise investment for the United States. Every single American benefits every day from our commitment to unleashing the American spirit of innovation. However, while we benefited greatly from being the first nation to invest heavily in fundamental research and innovation, our competitors are rapidly catching up. Other governments, most notably the PRC, have copied our playbook, and they are investing heavily today in hopes of controlling the innovations of the future. Take, for example, semiconductor production. The offshoring of this critical sector, which happened slowly over many years, became a national security imperative when we felt the effects of chip shortages in automobiles and other industries. Congress and the administration acted quickly to invest in bringing that capacity back to the United States. However, we must ensure that we do not face the same challenge in AI, in quantum information science, advanced manufacturing, or other critical technologies. That is why Congress did not pass just a CHIPS Act, but a CHIPS and Science Act, which recognized the investments in research today are the key to a more prosperous and secure future tomorrow. The FY25 President's budget request for NSF includes $10.2 billion, an investment that is vital to the United States' continued leadership in science, engineering, and technology. NSF has worked quickly and with intentionality to implement the CHIPS and Science Act. Our flagship example of this is the Regional Innovation Engines, which are the largest broad-scale investments in the nation's history to spur place-based innovation in critical fields of R&D and economic and societal importance. Earlier this year, we announced the first 10 full-scale NSF engines, which will be the catalyst for the industries of tomorrow and build new powerhouses of innovation and high-tech entrepreneurship in communities throughout our country. In addition, NSF has funded 58 planning grants for future engines in almost every state of our nation. Chair Shaheen and Ranking Member Moran, this includes 2 exciting projects in New Hampshire and Kansas. In New Hampshire, a team led by the Northern Forest Center is working on advanced forest ecosystem management and forest product innovation to unlock new opportunities in a circular bioeconomy for New England. I can say that to all the senators because every one of you is represented to the regional innovation engines. I won't have time. And in Kansas, Kansas State University is leading a robust network of partners focused on biosecurity, biodefense, and advanced manufacturing. Both projects are excellent examples of the incredible potential for coupling the ingenuity of our research enterprise with the strength of our communities to create opportunities everywhere. But these investments must be sustained to be successful. The FY25 request includes $205 million for the NSF regional innovation engines, which will be critical to the continuation of the first 10 engines and our ability to move forward with any of the projects currently in development. NSF is committed to inspiring and empowering the talent that resides in communities throughout our nation. We will continue to be intentional in growing capacity in Epcore jurisdictions, investing in minority serving and emerging research institutions, and in our community colleges. I'm happy to report that NSF not only met, but exceeded the CHIPS and Science Epcore funding targets for FY23. And we expect that to continue into the future, which I know was a shared priority for NSF and for this committee. NSF is also keenly focused on protecting the integrity of our investments. We have taken research security head-on, prohibiting funding for researchers that participate in a malign foreign talent program, developing analytics capabilities to assess risks, providing training for the research community, and working closely with law enforcement and the intelligence community. In the near future, we will begin piloting a risk rubric that will guide the agency in making determinations about the national security implications of projects in sensitive technologies. Chair Shaheen, Ranking Member Moran, and members of the committee, our country is at a critical moment. We must seize the promise of technologies like AI while continuing to invest in the curiosity-driven research that seeds the industries of tomorrow and builds the workforce of the future. In addition, we must invest in world-class research infrastructure that makes discoveries possible. There is incredible demand in the need for the next generation of telescopes, research vessels, high-performance computing, and more. In addition, we face growing needs to recapitalize our infrastructure in the Arctic and Antarctic, 2 regions that are critical to not just scientific progress, but our geopolitical priorities. Curiosity-driven research, use-inspired innovations, and research infrastructure are all interrelated and are all critical to our global leadership. A prime example is NSF's efforts to stand up the National AI Research Resource. The NAIR is essentially democratizing AI research capabilities and unlocking the potential of AI to transform fields from healthcare to weather modeling. Our leadership in AI, quantum, advanced wireless is critical to the economic and national security. These technologies must be rooted in and guided by core American values such as openness, explainability, and integrity. I'm certain that our innovators are ready to meet this challenge. However, we simply cannot meet this moment without investing significantly in the people who make this all possible. NSF greatly appreciates the support of this committee, and I look forward to working with you to ensure American leadership in science, engineering, and technologies for generations to come. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you both very much for your leadership and for your enthusiasm. We will now go to questions. Each member will have 5 minutes for questions in this round, and we will take members in the order of arrival, beginning with myself and Senator Moran. Administrator Nelson, I really appreciated the opportunity we had yesterday to talk about some of the challenges that NASA has given the fiscal constraints we're under. As you pointed out, we can't get everything done that we want to get done in the current fiscal environment. And on a bipartisan basis, we made the decision to prioritize the Artemis campaign because of the importance to scientific exploration and national security. But as we know, the decision came at the expense of a number of other NASA directorates and as well as agencies across the CJS bill. So one of the things that I hope you will share with the committee is what NASA is doing to hold contractors accountable for cost overruns and for scheduling delays. Because as the NASA Inspector General estimates that the first 4 Artemis launches will cost $4.2 billion each, not including $42 billion in formulation and development costs over the past 12 years. So I think it's important that Congress and the American people know that we're doing everything we can, both to support those missions, but to make sure they're as cost-effective as possible.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. And as a matter of fact, that was one of the reasons that many moons ago we passed the NASA Act that set us off on the dual course with commercial partners. And so as we go back to the moon in order to go to Mars, we go back with not only international partners, but commercial partners. And the lander for the moon is being done by 2 commercial companies. The first competition was won by SpaceX, the second by Blue Origin. And in each case, the estimated cost of the lander was borne 1/2 by the commercial company, both SpaceX and Blue Origin. In other words, that cost NASA half.
And can you speak to the dollar savings?
Sure.
In that?
As a matter of fact, the winning bid on the SpaceX was roughly no, let me say this. SpaceX had offered $3 billion. That would be NASA's cost. I'm rounding here.
Yeah.
The next 2 competitors offered $6 billion and $8.5 billion. So if you take a target of 6, SpaceX is paying for half of the lander. The same thing happened in the second competition that Blue Origin won, and of course SpaceX was not a part of that. And basically, Blue Origin's part of the lander in their case was roughly $3 billion as well. Now, but you're asking a question about all of the science issues, and I'm happy to report to you that in the 23-24 development projects of the 16 major projects, excluding Mars sample return, and we can talk about that, of the 16, only 4 are behind time schedule.
Well, I was really asking about the space mission, the Artemis missions as a whole. And given the high cost, has NASA considered an independent review board for exploration? I came on late into the James Webb Telescope development, but I know that when the independent review board was set up, that's when that project really started moving and the cost stayed within the constraints that we had. So do you think that it would make sense to look at something like that as we're looking at the space mission overall?
We are constantly having other eyes come in. There has been a GAO report, there has been the Inspector General's report. The fact is that when you go to the moon in order to go to Mars, it's hard. And that's what President Kennedy said at Rice University. He said, we go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And I would call to your attention, since you're specifically asking about Artemis, that Artemis, they're saying it's $4 billion a copy, but that's all the development costs are in there. The more that you fly out Artemis, then you're going to amortize that cost, and your costs are going to come down. We have done other things. There were 16 contracts on the Artemis program. We are trying to consolidate that in just a few contracts so we can get greater responsibility and cost control.
Thank you. I'm over time, but we can come back to this in the next round. Senator Moran.
As I walked in, Senator Shaheen apparently was asking a question that I intend to ask, so I look forward to that further conversation. Let me continue, though, Administrator, with Artemis. Given the national security implications of China and the South Pole of the moon, do you agree that Artemis is the priority of NASA as we go through our appropriations process?
It is clearly one of the top priorities because of the geopolitical situation that we are in a space race. But it portends something else. The reason we're going back to a different part of the moon, the South Pole, is we know there is ice in the crevices of the rocks that are constantly shadowed. We have a probe on a commercial lander going later this year that is going to dig and see at the South Pole if there's water. If there is, then there is rocket fuel, hydrogen and oxygen. And that becomes a very valuable resource. That's why China is going to the South Pole as well. And my concern, as I've stated publicly, so this is nothing new, that if we let China get there first, mindful of what China has done on Tierra Firma, namely go to the South China Sea, the Spratly Islands, saying this is now ours, stay out, everybody else. I'm concerned that they might, you can tell where a fella's going by where he's been. And that's my concern.
Senator Nelson, let me remind you of your days of being a United States Senator. The clock only gives me 5 minutes. Let me add to the Artemis conversation. The budget request indicates that there will be a further delay in the launch dates on Artemis 2, slipping to September 25 and Artemis 3 launching no earlier than September 26. How confident are you in those dates for Artemis 2 and 3 and subsequent missions?
First of all, we don't fly until it's ready because of the safety of our astronauts. We think that September of 25 for Artemis 2 is a realistic date. Obviously, September of 26 for Artemis 3, which, as you think about it, and I want this in the record, Artemis 3, if you compare it to the Apollo program, is a combination of Apollo 9, 10, and 11, which was the landing on the moon, and part of Apollo 8 that orbited the moon 10 times. And so it is a difficult task, and if we land, it is dependent on SpaceX having their lander ready. Now, they have hit all of their milestones, and in a couple of weeks, they're going to launch that huge rocket that has 33 Raptor engines in its tail, and they're going to do more showing the space worthiness of it. It is my hope that SpaceX will be ready with their lander.
Thank you. Dr. Pontchartrain, I mentioned in my opening statement that this week Senator Cantwell and I introduced legislation to ensure that NSF is supporting artificial intelligence education, particularly in rural areas of the country. Among other provisions, the NSF AI Education Act would support scholarships for undergraduate and graduate students who are studying artificial intelligence including as it pertains to education, agriculture, and advanced manufacturing. It also supports the provisions of AI resources to colleges and universities around the country with an emphasis on Epcore, universities, tribal colleges, historically black colleges, and university, among other institutions. I just would like your reaction for the record to that legislation.
Thank you so much, Senator Moran. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to really scale rapidly the AI workforce. Let me give you a concrete number. We would need 3 million AI workers trained as early as 2026 in our country. We cannot wait. Our competitors are out-competing and out-innovating. This is not the time to slow down. This is the time to accelerate really fast. These investments are very critical in AI because it impacts every sphere of what we do. Whether it is agriculture, you mentioned agriculture. We launched 25 AI institutes in the last 3 years. And let me underscore that with, we invested at NSF $300 million. We got partnership investments of $200 million, including from the private sector. This model of public-private partnership is how NSF is advancing in these critical areas. So I'm very grateful for what you have done, and I think this is timely, important, and I would say very urgent.
I wasn't too concerned with you going over time as I was with Senator Nelson since you were endorsing my legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to both of you for being here as witnesses, but also all the great work that you do each and every day. Dr. Punch, I certainly share your belief that AI holds incredible promise for economic opportunity and human advancement, and that's why I also want to applaud your budget's planned investments in this technology. Certainly you are leaning in heavily, and it's quite apparent from your testimony you're quite enthusiastic and passionate about it as well, which we appreciate. It's also why, though, last Congress, I championed the AI Scholarship for Service Act, which passed as part of the CHIPS and Science Act back in '21. My bill requires NSF to study the feasibility of starting a scholarship for service program on AI, and if found to be feasible, to carry out that program. So my question for you, sir, is can you provide an update on the status of the feasibility study and speak to the potential positive impact of an AI scholarship for service program similar to NSF's CyberCore scholarship for service that you currently have?
Thank you, Senator. That's a very important question. I just want to underscore that the CyberCore program has been hugely successful. Again, needing scale, but hugely successful. So this model of doing that for AI is an excellent idea. And to the point that you raised on the CHIPS and Science Act about delivering the report, we are about to deliver the report to Congress on the implementation and the feasibility of such a program. I would say that the initial conditions are extremely favorable for us to engage in this kind of AI scholars program, because I think our country needs AI in every sphere, as I said, particularly in federal government, in provincial government, state governments, as well as other aspects. We need huge number of well-trained, skilled technical workforce and advanced trained workforce. So this is very well placed, and you will have the report submitted soon to Congress. So we are on our way in terms of developing that in response to the CHIPS and Science Act.
Great. We'll look forward to looking at that and then making sure we're making the investments we need to make it a reality.
I appreciate that.
And my only ask for you is, as you're working to implement the act, I would certainly like to invite you to Michigan to see some of the amazing scientists we have. I know you have some connections to the University of Michigan, yes, but we have a number of great universities and really some amazing high-tech, innovative startups, particularly in AI. And yes, if you're willing to come, we would love to host you.
I would love to be there. There are 4 AI institutes where Michigan universities are participating, just to put this out of the 25, right, which is very exciting. That's what AI institutes do. They bring every part of our nation. And so I'm excited to come with you, sir. And there are many other investments, not only in the University of Michigan, Michigan State, but all the institutions in Michigan. We believe that it should be all of the institutions bringing the capacity for our nation at this important time. Thank you so much.
Great.
And I accept your invitation.
Excellent. Well, we'll be sure to provide that shortly. Administrator Nelson, great to see you again in the halls of Congress. I certainly enjoyed immensely serving with you here in the Senate, but I know you're incredibly happy where you are. It's a lifelong passion of yours. As you know, NASA and the space program's success are absolutely dependent on having a strong supply chain, and I'm proud that Michigan is a top 10 state in aerospace manufacturing, and it's home to over 900 aerospace-related companies and continuing to grow, especially given how we know how to make things in Michigan. Advanced manufacturing is a key component of our competitive success globally. And that also includes components for rockets and spacecraft that we're going to need for missions like Artemis II and others. So my question for you, sir, is first off, will you come to Michigan to visit some of these amazing manufacturers? But also, would you talk a little bit about how NASA's dollars are supporting our small to medium domestic manufacturers, not just the big ones we all think about, and how we have to do more to have that incredible innovation that comes out of these smaller companies?
As we discussed, I'm coming in July. Look forward to it. Just on the Artemis program to the moon, you have 44 Michigan companies that are suppliers. By the way, we take very seriously the Buy American Act and the executive order that is similar. And so I'm looking forward. Now, on small suppliers, I don't have the percentage in my head, but NASA has made a real effort over the time of these big space contracts that a certain percentage of that does go to small businesses. And I can get the specific small businesses in Michigan that would be a part of that, but overall, nationwide, it's a fairly sizable percentage. And that's why each year when the Small Business Administration does their scorecard, you will see that NASA comes out very well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your continued efforts on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Peters. We could keep both of you busy all the time visiting our states. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have listened to each of you gentlemen with admiration. Thank you for your intellect and your service. Mr. Administrator, I know I don't need to tell you about the Michoud Assembly Facility in Louisiana. We're NASA's rocket factory. We're very proud of it. A few years ago, a hurricane blew our roof off, and you helped us to get it repaired, and I want to thank you for that, Mr. Administrator. I want to ask for your help with our administration buildings, building number 1, building number 2. They were built, I think, in 1943. We're spending about $1 million a year in repair costs. We've certainly reached the point of diminishing returns. Can you help us get some new buildings there?
I can help you, but I need your help too. We have $5 billion of unfunded infrastructure needs. Give you an example, last year I was begging and borrowing and stealing to get the money for a little old bridge between Virginia and Maryland so it wouldn't fall in the water and we couldn't launch our rockets from Wallops Island, Virginia. And we shouldn't have to do that. I was trying to cut deals with Senator Richard Shelby in order to get that because it was a priority, but we've got $5 billion.
You can cut a deal with me.
Well, let me tell you, you've got 2,600 NASA employees in Louisiana. You've got that Michoud facility. You've got 13 companies that are directly working on Artemis.
Yeah.
And the body of that rocket is built right there outside of New Orleans.
Well, if we get you some funding for the infrastructure that we know you need, I hope you'll keep our need in mind with respect to those two administration buildings. Let me ask you about your work on the Mars habitation and life support systems. I know we talked about it in past committee testimony, and we had some language in the appropriations bill. Basically, you've got to manufacture, as I appreciate it, mock-up and eventual habitats for your missions to Mars. Is that right?
I think you're referring to where we put people in an enclosure and try to simulate what it would be like for a
Yes.
year
Yes.
on the surface of Mars.
Yes.
That is going on, yes.
Can assembly centers like Michoud play a role in that?
That, if I recall, is going on at the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Yes, sir. We can do it better.
Well, I'm always for better, faster, and cheaper.
That's
So let's
Michoud.
let's look.
Better, faster, cheaper.
There you go.
Let's sit down and talk.
Okay.
Okay. Finally, in the time I have left, tell me about your SLS heavy lift rocket for the Artemis missions.
Well, the core of it is built right in Louisiana.
Yes, sir.
Then they stack the engines on it. They barge it up to not too far across the Louisiana-Mississippi line to the Stennis Space Center. They test the rockets, and then the assembled core of the rocket is barged to the Kennedy Space Center, where then vertically it is stacked in the vehicle assembly building. This next Artemis 2 that will go next year will start to be stacked this summer. The solid rockets first, and then the core stage that's made in Louisiana will be done this fall. We tested it without a crew. The rocket performed flawlessly. It was so good that we did a whole bunch of additional tests. But now the test is to put 4 human beings in that spacecraft on the top of the rocket. And that's the next mission, to check out all the life support systems in the spacecraft, which is the capsule on top called Orion. And then the third one is where we go into lunar orbit. They transfer into a SpaceX lander. It goes down. They stay 6 days on the surface. We're only going to send 2 of 4 astronauts down. They come back and rendezvous in lunar orbit and then come home.
My time's up. Doctor, thank you for your service. Don't forget Louisiana.
Thank you. I would love to come and visit Louisiana.
You're
and we
welcome
have
anytime. You're
one
welcome
of the 10
anytime.
regional innovation engines. Senator, last time you asked the question, if I can just take a minute.
Sure.
You said,
Take all
"We
the
need to
time
be-"
you need.
You said to me, we need to make sure that opportunities, ideas, talent is everywhere. We need to energize that everywhere. Senator, I'm very pleased to report that one of the 10 regional innovation engines, type 2, which is a large scale on energy, is in Louisiana. And we have launched it, and we're very happy to do it with the governor in an event that happened in Louisiana. So I just wanted you to know that. In addition to that, we have also got the National AI Research Resource pilots, and University of Louisiana Lafayette is one of those projects. So you'll be happy to know that we are taking this message of the entire nation has got capacity to contribute, and we should leverage that. So I just wanted you to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Heinrich.
Administrator Nelson, you and I have talked about this before, but I am very concerned about the NASA-caused damage to New Mexico's groundwater at the White Sands Test Facility, NDMA, TCE, and I've raised this with you in the past, but I want to be very clear that NASA needs to get this wrapped up and compensate the state of New Mexico. What's the status of your settlement negotiations with the New Mexico Natural Resources Trustee?
We have spent $200 million to date to investigate and address the groundwater issue. We continue to investigate the sources of contamination, and NASA continues to work closely with DOJ and your New Mexico scientific agency, environmental agency, on what needs to be done to meet the final settlement discussions.
Okay. Before I was in Congress, I was the New Mexico Natural Resources Trustee, and I've got a lot of experience with federal agencies really moving very slowly in those negotiations. So I would urge you to simply try to get to yes and make sure it's on a reasonable timeline, because there is nothing more valuable to New Mexicans than their water.
Absolutely. We've done this in other states, and I can tell you straight up that we will continue this in New Mexico.
Thank you, Administrator. Dr. Ponce, talk a little bit more about the National AI Research Resource, and specifically how important do you think it is to pass things like the Create AI Act that will build on that momentum?
Thank you very much, Senator, for that important question. First of all, I want to express my gratitude for your leadership as a co-chair of the caucus, AI Caucus, and the Create AI Act. And also thank you for being present in the showcase that we had on the AI Institute. You saw firsthand.
It was incredible.
Firsthand, the 25 AI institutes, the people, the ideas, the translation, the new companies that are emerging. So on the NAIR, to answer your question on the NAIR, as you know, we had a 90-day, from the executive order of President Biden, 90-day timeline that was given to us to launch an air pilot. And this is an interagency effort. All agencies working together. I'm so proud to say in 90 days, we got 12 federal agencies, NSF, DOE, NASA, and all of the federal agencies working together. And now, on top of that, we have 25 non-federal, non-government agencies as part of the NAIR pilot. So we put in $30 million as part of the pilot. We got, the who's who in AI. NVIDIA put in 30 million, Microsoft 20 million of resources, and 10 million from Amazon, everybody. And so this is a phenomenal accomplishment, I would say, but it also testifies to the fact there is so much interest in wanting to have this done. Why is NAIR important? To your question again, we cannot have where AI talent and ideas are everywhere, that only the haves have the ability to be able to exercise those ideas because they have access to resources. It's got to be for everyone, so that we unleash every possible idea and innovation all across our nation. That's why NAIR is very, very important. So we need to go to full-scale NAIR very, very quickly. And so the Create AI Act, I'm so grateful to your leadership and in Congress, because that's what's going to get us the NAIR investments in time. And I can assure you, it will not be just only federal investments. We will bring, like what we have shown in the pilot, companion investments to make sure that we're unleashing every possible idea, talent, and innovation across our nation.
When you look at some of the co-sponsors from across the aisle that have joined us on that Create AI Act, it's that idea of democratizing this to every state that is very appealing to them. I want to touch on something that's related to that, and that's the Epcore Track 1 program, because it gave states like New Mexico a fair shot at securing federal research dollars. And the decision to do away with Epcore Track 1 has been a real blow to New Mexico in particular. I want to see the New Mexico Epcore State Office funded, and I want to ask you, will you work with me to get this done with some sort of bridge funding while you sort out how to fill the gaps that were created by doing away with Epcore Track 1?
Senator, I want to characterize this right. What we have done with Epcore is not doing away with Epcore. What we have done is, in fact, expanded, enriched, empowered more.
But it
has
resulted in the New Mexico office not being funded.
I'm happy to sit and talk about this to your request. I'm happy to do that anytime, because I just want to make it very clear. What we're trying to do is to expand even more opportunities. I talked to Senator Reid about this too. Even more opportunities, not just only one Epcore jurisdiction funding, but through the Ecore and eRISE programs and Epcore Fellowship Program, that we're able to have many institutions and many more such grants being made possible to Epcore states. I want to make this very clear.
That sounds great, yes. But that's not been our experience.
So I know that any transition, as you can imagine, any transition, right now we're already announcing the next round of Epcore, the ERISE and Ecore programs. I understand that any transition may have some challenges, which are individual, and I'm happy to address them, like as I talked to Senator Reid too. I'm happy to address them. I'm happy to talk to you on the specific things and happy to see what we can do. Because my objective, and I want to be very clear about this when I said this in my remarks, we exceeded when I came into this office, into this role, Epcore percentages were about 13 to 14% of the NSF funding. This year, sir, our chips and science allocation was 15.5% is what we were supposed to meet. We exceeded. We are at 15.9 in FY 2023. And I expect that we are going to continue in FY25, it's going to be 16.5. I expect that we are going to outperform because I am a firm believer that talent and ideas are all across our nation. Everything that we do at NSF, you can test this. It's not just words, it's actions. Whether it is AI institutes, whether it is Epcore, that we want to make sure that talent and ideas are energized. So any systemic issues that precludes this principle of expansion, we are happy to take that and see how we can be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Senator Reid.
Well, first, welcome, Senator Nelson. May I call you that? But I want to follow up on Senator Heinrich's. He asked you a very specific question. Are you going to build in resources so that we can keep operating Epcore in New Mexico and Rhode Island and not close the offices in August?
The Ecore program, Senator, is about capacity building. It is about exactly that. So the two flavors that we have are Ecore and ERISE. This was based on a congressional report that was submitted by our Committee of Equal Opportunity. It's a congressional report-based recommendation. The two programs, I just want to be very clear. One of them is capacity building, continuing to have that kind of a support for being able to have Epcore successes. The other ERISE is about the state S&T plans and how we might then have groups incubated to expand the science and technology capabilities of the region also. So that's what these two flavors are, and the fellowships are focused on individuals. So all three are meant not to close down, but to expand and enhance. So I just want to make sure that it's not misunderstood.
So you've not answered Senator Heinrich's question, you've not answered my question. Are you going to make provisions so that the Epcore offices will not be forced to be closed in August or so in
That is a
Mexico
transition.
and Rhode Island and several other places?
Yeah.
This, your rollout has not been successful, to be blunt, because we're seeing now Epcore programs evaporate in the very states that we place them in, because we don't want every nickel from NSF going to MIT and Stanford and all the other big research institutions.
It is not happening, Senator, with all due respect. In fact, when I talk about the Epcore percentages increasing, it doesn't go to MIT. It in fact goes, we can in fact share all the
That's because we wrote it, et cetera, and you're eroding that base. When our office has to shut down in New Mexico or Rhode Island, then all the mechanisms to apply for Epcore, to engage in Epcore are essentially gone.
You have my word, Senator, that we will work with you. You said I have not answered the question. I'm answering the question, that we will work with the states. In fact, yesterday I had a conversation with
I know you did, and it appeared to me as just telling them how screwed up they were, which is not what I expect a federal agency to do to my state.
No, it was not. I think the specifications that we had about how the proposal should be submitted was not followed, and we are trying to see how we can get that done. And as I said, I will make sure that we will not back away from building the capacity in the Epcore states. And that's, and to specifically, you're saying I'm not answering the question. I will go back and look at what the transition funding for those offices to continue operating so that we might not lose this bridge. And I'm giving you that.
Let me go back to another question is, how did you help these states to prepare for the new Epcore? Because the results are less than encouraging. I mean, we have a lot more time spending on administration, figuring out the programs, what's new, what's not, and that's taking away from some of the substantive issues that you have to deal with in Epcore. And I just don't see an improvement here at all.
So you asked about the help that we are providing. We, in fact, have launched a new program called Granted, which is focused on helping those states to be successful by providing all the information that they need in terms of putting successful grant proposals together. So in fact, even as of yesterday, we are having constant conversations, and people, I'm sure in your state will acknowledge the fact that we are having those conversations to see how we can build this capacity and have those successful proposals constructed.
Well, from our perspective, what we're seeing is these new awards are for less money and for shorter periods of time, and fewer applications seem to be successful, which to me is not an indication of a program that's being well run.
I'm happy to share the details of the program. You will see that it is about ultimately getting to have a lot more investments in EPSCoR jurisdictions, because if you're going to follow the percentages of EPSCoR allocations, clearly you can see as the budget scales, we have already increased it to 15.9, and if you're going to 20%, it is going to be more investments in EPSCoR states, not non-EPSCoR states or the institutions that you mentioned. It is not about that. It is, in fact, increasing the investments. So it is not going to be about taking away from anything in EPSCoR for anything outside of EPSCoR.
Well,
as I said, I'm happy to have further conversations with your staff, with you, and share data to make sure that you feel that this is not something that is minimizing or marginalizing in any way the EPSCoR focus.
well, Director, we'll have those discussions, but I'd like to see the results in the field, not discussions over a conference table in Washington or a phone call to Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reed. Let me just say, Director Ponch, I share the concerns about EPSCoR. Under the CHIPS and Science Act for fiscal year 2025, the target is 16.5% of research funding and 20% of scholarship and fellowship funding. I don't know if you know exactly where we are in trying to meet those goals and how long it will take, but it is a real concern that I think we need to discuss further.
Happy to, but as I said, in 23 we exceeded the goals, and in 24 we are on track to exceed the targets also.
Thank you. Administrator Nelson, I want to go back to the discussion about how we keep cost overruns and scheduling concerns in check. Does NASA ever withhold payments for contractors who are going over or don't meet the requirements of the contract?
Yes, ma'am. An evaluation is done on their performance. If they met the goal, then there's a certain payment that they get. If they didn't meet the goal, then they are docked.
And as you're looking at Artemis 5 and beyond, has NASA considered thinking about commercially competing those launch services as well, given the success that you've had to date?
They are already competed. As a matter of fact, the schedule that is going on, Artemis 3 is the first landing, that's SpaceX lander. Artemis 4, a taller, more powerful rocket with more payload, but a landing as well, that's SpaceX. But Artemis 5 is Blue Origin. And that is as a result of the second competition that I insisted on as I inherited NASA with only one award. And so, yes, and that's where we got the savings of approximately half the cost of the lander in both competitions.
Thank you. Director Ponch, as I said in my opening statement, the NSF in the President's budget request would have your budget increase by more than 12%. Can you talk about what you would like to do with that funding if it does in fact get through the process?
So first of all, thank you so much for that question. NSF's budget of 2024, you know this, was cut by 5%, but with the one-time allocations that were done because of the kind of, I wanted to be clearly stated, it ended up being an 8% cut for us relative to 2023. Now, if you look at the escalation of costs in terms of salaries and other things that happens, This is really a 10% cut to the budget, which we have been trying to manage in 2023. So when we talk about the 2025 budget, and I hope that, that it would be a minimal investment that is made, because we are essentially catching up. The 10.12 would be just a marginal improvement over what our 23 budget would have been. So this is a real serious problem that we are facing in our country today. Now, at the same time as we are having this going on, China invested 10% more in their science budget, with fundamental discoveries and outpacing United States. So this is not a good thing for us. In fact, I would argue that we are handing our competition in a silver platter to our competitors, especially our adversarial competitors. So this is not the time for us to do that. So that's the first point I want to make. Having said that, now to address your question, clearly we need to now make sure that our investments in the fundamental core research programs, which have been cut, because of this significant cut, as well as the graduate research fellowship program, which has been scaled down, have to be brought back to what it should be. In fact, it should be much more than that. That's the first focus that we need to have. Secondly, if you look at the Regional Innovation Engine competition, just as another example, the amount of proposals that were ready to actually launch and be successful with partnership resources that we were not able to bring into play is huge missed opportunity. That's a second problem. Third is when we talk about the advanced technologies like AI, like quantum, like advanced manufacturing, wireless, biotechnology, we are not investing enough in these areas, and that's what we are trying to do so that we can outpace and outcompete and out-innovate. So every one of these, and infrastructure is very important, and I'm very worried about the fact that we don't have enough resources allocated for infrastructure also, which is needed, because as we are trying to outcompete our nations, and look at the Antarctic and Arctic program, and Senator, you are a strong supporter of that, and we are not able to keep pace with these things. And we need to be outpacing, we are not even able to keep pace. And this is not a good recipe for us. So there's a lot of components here that I think we need to invest more in. And some of that we will be doing to address your question in FY25 budget, but it'll be nowhere near where it should be.
So how are you balancing the new technology innovation partnership directorate with the other needs of the agency?
I think what we are trying to do is to make sure that the needs of the agency, for the foundation of the foundation, if you want to think of it that way, is as vibrant as it should be and it can be, because these are not two different things. I just want to draw attention to that. The new directorate is a cross-cutting directorate, which actually works in close partnership with all the science directorate and engineering directorate. In fact, many of those programs are jointly worked on so that it leverages what happens in the directorates and also energizes what should happen in the directorates. So it's a two-way kind of a symbiotic relationship. So it is not like this is a separate thing or something that's happening that is taking away from something. In fact, all of these are working together, and so that each one is able to, because we cannot have AI innovations at the next level unless we are able to work with industry through the partnerships that we have in TIP that then infuses newer ideas into our computing directorate or geosciences directorate or biosciences directorate, social behavioral economic sciences directorate. We need to have all of this mathematical physical sciences directorate, education directorate, all of them working together. So that's the model that we have at NSF, not like these balkanized kind of thinking that typically might be how people construe this, as if somebody gets this, then somebody else doesn't get that. Instead, it is about how do you advance science, engineering, technology, and workforce development to outcompete.
Thank you. Senator Moran.
Thank you very much. Administrator Nelson, Aeronautics, hugely vital, important component. You've said the first day in NASA is related to aeronautics. I appreciate that prioritization. How is NASA, how do they collaborate with industry and academia to ensure that the breakthroughs that NASA develops are successfully integrated into the commercial, private sector, available to academia, increasing America's leadership in the aeronautical aspect of NASA?
I'll give you two examples that are ongoing right now. The X-59, which is the supersonic transport, but this is an experimental needle-nosed jet that's going to fly. It has this radical design. It is going to fly at the end of the year, and to see if we can go supersonic and not have the bam bam of the sonic boom, so that you could fly over populated areas and it would be a muffled roar, so that you could fly from New York to LA in 2 hours. That would, we do the research, and that would eventually be turned over to the commercial sector. The other project that's going on right now, called the X-66, is a joint project with Boeing on the future single-aisle mid-range aircraft, think the Boeing 737, that would get 30% fuel savings. By far, the most trafficked airliner is that mid-range single-aisle aircraft. If you can get 30% fuel, and the design of this is a high on the fuselage, very long and thin wing, so much that it has to be supported with struts. And the struts also give you lift, by the way. And then these big, new, improved fan jet engines, because it's higher off the ground, you can get newer. Between the wing and the engines, we can save 30% of fuel. So that is directly a joint project with NASA money and Boeing money.
I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing more about both of those projects. Administrator, would you ask someone on your team to visit with me and mine? I want to have a conversation about how some of the capabilities we have in Kansas for testing facilities of aircraft structures, materials, components, how we can better support the research and efforts at NASA. If you just have somebody on your team, make sure that we have a conversation.
It's done.
Thank you. Got a minute and a half. I got 6 questions, and let me pick between one of them. Let me just say in passing, Doctor, that there are this report by Jason about security of scientific research. There's a report that's due today. I think the deadline is May the 24th. I'm interested in knowing what NSF has to say about that. I won't ask a question, but if you can make sure that we know that. And then NSF budget includes funding for leadership class computing facilities. Again, I'm probably out of time, so I just was going to raise the point about the growth in computing capacity in the private sector. How much longer should the government continue to build supercomputers that may be relatively obsolete by the time the construction is complete? Maybe that's a short answer. If that's we can.
Yeah, no, I can give you a very quick answer. I mean, we work very closely with the industry so that this problem that you're talking about, the becoming obsolete, it's a constant, partnership with industry so that the latest and in fact the more advanced technologies are what we are deploying. For the computing need, as you heard the response to the AI, the NAIR pilot that we talked about, there is tremendous computing need right now on so many dimensions, whether it is climate mitigation or whether it is AI, whether it is quantum. The modeling needs are tremendous in every aspect of science and engineering. So it's important that we invest, but we also, to your point, we need to partner with industry very closely to understand their roadmaps of technology development so that we are integrating their future technology thinking as we are planning our own computing facilities, and that we do as we are looking at the future, like the LCCF and others. So
Government is always slower than the private sector in these advancements, and we need to make sure that we're get on the same path and not doing things that are obsolete. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome to both of you. Thank you for your service. Dr. Panchanathan, let me start by thanking you for all the work that you're doing. I'm not going to have time to get an answer to this question, but I look forward to getting together with you for an update on a provision that I worked very hard to include in the CHIPS and Science bill on a bipartisan basis to make sure that we engage all of our talent in order to move our country forward in the areas of science and technology. In Maryland, we have 4 HBCUs, including Morgan State, which is a real jewel. In the United States of America today, no HBCUs have R1, Research 1 sort of status. Morgan is at R2, and the provision that we included in the CHIPS and Science Bill was to make sure that we engage your help, among others, to make sure that we can move to R1. Thank you for the efforts you're making there, and I look forward to a full report later. Along with the progress report on another provision that I included with Senator Blunt, ensuring that we don't get caught, we, the United States, don't get caught unprepared for what new technologies might arise in the future. We need to be constantly looking over the horizon. Administrator Nelson, great to see you. Let me just start with some thank yous, because I know that you recognize well that just as Florida is an important space state, so is the state of Maryland. And I want to thank you for confirming the Dragonfly mission led by APL in collaboration with Goddard. Thank you for working with me and my colleagues on recommissioning the JEDI mission on the space station. Thank you for the infrastructure investment at Wallops. I believe you mentioned that. So I want to now ask you about a collection of other things, because you understand better than anybody that this is all about the future. You and I met this week to talk about a number of important projects, including OSAM-1. I want to thank the chairman, Senator Shaheen, for working with us to insert in the most recent appropriations bill the language on OSAM-1. I'm not going to go into detail here, but OSAM-1, in my view, will provide the United States government with a very important capability, this robotic arm to refuel, to service, but also to move satellites from one area to another. And we have language in the bill, requiring that you take a look at an updated plan for a scheduled launch in 2026. I also know that DARPA, among others, but DARPA may be interested in this capability as well. So my question to you is a very simple one. Are you committed to working with us to put forward the best good faith effort to keep this mission going so that we can achieve the 2026 launch date?
Within the budget constraints, we're going to do exactly what you required in the 24 appropriations bill. In addition, as we discussed 2 days ago, I have already initiated the visit with DARPA of what particular technologies that have been developed in OSAM can be utilized as we have a changing space environment, that what OSAM was originally designed for in low Earth orbit has now changed. And so the answer is yes. I again am so bold as to say Maryland is a very important state to NASA. You have 22,000 employees. You have $2.3 billion of NASA's $25 billion budget. Just under 10% of the whole budget goes to your state. In addition to what you have already mentioned, we've got the next Landsat coming. That's in Maryland. Da Vinci, Dragonfly, you mentioned, which is an exciting new one, as well as Nancy Grace Roman and the beginning of the planning of the Technology Maturation Office for the next iteration telescope, which is the Habitable Worlds. So there's a lot going on.
Let me, if I could, it's a one-word question on Habitable Worlds. Thank you for ending there. Can you confirm again that NASA Goddard will be the lead agency on that program?
If you all concur, we have already requested that for a technology maturation office.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen.
Thank
Senator
you.
Capito.
By the way, you missed my comments about how much time and grief just to get that little old bridge going to Wallops Island.
I wanted to make sure I acknowledged that, and thank you for that effort. I know it's.
Thank you.
Senator Capito.
I'm going to address Dr. Ponch, if I can address you that way. You know, I've implored previous directors to not mothball that Green Bank telescope, and you and I talked previously, right before. The new director, Dr. James Jackson, who started a few years ago, I just think we ought to talk about and tell everybody about the possibilities and the promise of radar systems in the area of planetary defense. National Academy of Sciences has written of the dangerous effects of near-Earth objects. What role do you believe radio astronomy, and specifically Green Bank, which is the largest fully steerable telescope in the world, located in West Virginia, what role do you see there, and where do you see the future?
Now, GPT is a tremendous asset. You know, just to put this in perspective, the 100 million GPT continues to be the cutting-edge resource that we have got for advancing science. As you know, that was part of the detection of the gravitational waves as an nanograv. And so it's now 23 years old, and Senator, I was just talking to you just before this hearing that we are working on making sure that it is maintained well. So we are constantly investing in ensuring that it is maintained well. It's also being integrated into the next generation of radio astronomy. You talked about Radio Astronomy Observatory, including the planetary defense objectives and so on. So it's an integral part of the planning of what we do with the next generation Very Large Array, the NGVLA programs also. And in the current VLBA, you know, we have got a good portfolio of ground-based astronomy facilities for the work that we are doing. So the GPT clearly will have a very critical part, and it will be a critical component of the NGVLA. There's no question about that, which is currently in the design phase. We've just put that in the design phase. So one way or the other, GPT will have a significant role because it is, as you said, the single large dish radio telescope available for the U.S. astronomy community.
Great.
So we are working to make sure that we're working very closely as we are thinking about the future, maintaining the current status of GPT and what it can do, but also what its role is in the NGVLA thinking.
I look forward to working with you on that, and we're going to set up that visit to the beautiful part of our state.
I would love to come with you. Thank you.
Well, it's good to see you, Senator Nelson, and I'll never forget when we sat together with our spouses, and you told me about your whole ride with NASA. And so to see you here today, as we've seen many times, is really, really fulfilling. We have the IV&V Center in West Virginia, which is critical to every NASA mission. But we also have the Epcore program that is important to institutions like our West Virginia University and others, Marshall, I too believe. Where do you see Epcore in terms of growing and being able to get more and younger people interested in science, particularly young women and more diverse populations?
We take it very seriously. We are making a direct effort beyond Epcore in order to get our space grants out to parts of the country that you may not think would be the recipients of space research grants. For example, the rural parts of the country.
Good.
And this is all a part of our trying to be very inclusive with how we spend our research and development money.
Those are essential dollars to, particularly in rural America, as you said. Let's go to the IV&V Center that does all the verifications. And I don't know that I've been briefed on this, or maybe you can help me with this. What kind of coordination do you have with the private sector at IV&V? Obviously, the research is not, or the verifications are not all research by, or all performed by NASA, or some of them are contractors. Can you talk about the public-private partnership there?
Yes, there are 60 direct civil servants matched with 364 contractors.
Right.
And that's what we're doing. The economic effect is extends beyond that into 700 jobs.
Right, and I will say too, they do internships and cooperative arrangements with the Fairmont, but also West Virginia University and whoever's in their surrounding area, again, to spur the next generation workforce onto this. So when is Artemis going to go up?
September of next year, 25. That's
Can I
what
come and bring all my 4 granddaughters with me?
I wish you would.
Good. That's a commitment I'm going to make sure is kept.
We'll see if we can make it not like Artemis 1 that was at 1:45 in the morning.
Okay, well, they may just have to stay up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Capito. Senator Britt.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Shaheen and Vice Chair Moran, for having this subcommittee hearing to discuss NASA and the National Science Foundation's FY25 budget request. Certainly appreciate the two of you being here in front of us today. I want to take this opportunity to express my thanks and appreciation to the civil servants, the suppliers, the contractors, all of who work tirelessly to continue to support the missions at Marshall Space Flight Center. I want to note for the record that I have absolutely full faith and confidence in Marshall's newest director, Director Joseph Pelfrey. He has done a tremendous job, and I'm excited to continue to be able to work with him. Administrator Nelson, I understand the budget realities and fiscal constraints that you were under when formulating this budget request, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for continuing to fund several of Marshall's key priorities that are critical to carrying out so many of the missions there. Space Launch System, the Human Landing System, and the Nuclear Thermal Propulsion. I am greatly appreciative and look forward to working with you on each of those. I know we must continue to invest in these important programs, and I want to thank Chairwoman Shaheen and Vice Chair Moran for their commitment to making sure that these are properly funded. Maintaining the Artemis mission schedule is imperative to ensuring that we beat China back to the moon. However, earlier this year, NASA revealed that because of various safety and hardware issues, the Artemis II mission is now delayed until September 2025, so nearly 1 year behind schedule. I appreciate NASA's diligence in addressing these issues, specifically the heat shield in Orion and spacecraft where the crew will be housed. The safety and well-being of our astronauts is of the utmost importance, and so I appreciate you making sure that that is a priority. Administrator, question for you. Are you properly resourced to address the safety and hardware issues to ensure that Artemis II can safely launch and is not further delayed?
I can assure you we will not launch until it's ready. We have had to make tough choices, and in this budget for exploration, we are down $500 million. We will make do with that. We are still on the schedule for September of '25. Artemis II is meeting all the milestones.
Good.
We are doing extra examination of some of the unusual things that happen on the heat shield.
Good.
And obviously, we're not going to fly that until we're ready.
And Mr. Administrator, if there is anything that is going to delay that further, we'd just love a commitment from you that we can continue this conversation. So if there are things that we need to be doing for you, I'm aware of that, and we can do our very best to make sure we put safety first and we also stay on time. Another question in that vein, I am the daughter of 2 small business owners, and I understand how uncertainty negatively impacts sometimes the little guy the most. And so as you consider the industrial base for SLS, many of the suppliers are very small companies. And I would argue these hardworking folks, many of whom are Alabamians, are the backbone to continued success in missions all across our country, but certainly there with SLS. I just want to associate myself, since I am almost out of time, with Senator Peters' comments on just continuing to make sure that we place emphasis on these small businesses. It is my opinion that in order to maintain the industrial base capabilities and supply chains, that these people have irreplaceable knowledge and skills, and so it is critically important that we think about this as these delays occur, that there's continued work for them to be doing. I want to switch gears real quick before I'm finished to NASA's Vision 2040. I believe it's important to bring NASA into the 21st century and ensure that we retain a skilled workforce while also continuing to recruit the best and brightest talent. However, there are several aspects of Vision 2040 that do give me some concern. It's my understanding that Vision 2040 recommends that the program managers who oversee many of NASA's critical programs will now report directly to headquarters. I strongly believe that our centers who are responsible for the success of NASA programs, whether it be SLS or spacesuits or exploration ground systems, should retain their direct oversight and responsibilities of their program managers, their workforce, and their program's long-term success. So, Mr. Administrator, I would like for NASA to increase transparency here, and would like to get a commitment from you to just keep me informed of any additional Vision 2040 recommendations before they are implemented.
Well, of course.
Thank you so much.
And I want to recommend that you talk to Joseph Pelfrey about your concern that things are going to go flying off to other states.
Okay, I'll do it.
The program office is in Washington for Moon to Mars. That was the same during Apollo. The program office was where you can bring everything together. Now, you ask about suppliers for Artemis. You have 85 companies in Alabama that are suppliers. The amount of money NASA sends to Alabama is $2.7 billion each year. That's about 14% of NASA's entire budget.
And boy, we're grateful.
And that includes 24,000 direct NASA employees. So Alabama is a very big part of what is happening and is inextricably entwined in the success
Thank you so much, Mr.
of
Administrator.
NASA and our Moon to Mars program.
We are really proud of the work that is done in our great state, and excited to continue to see it happen here, and thank you for your commitment. May I say just one more thing? I realize I am out of time, Madam Chairwoman. Director Ponch, I just want to say I am out of time, and she is being so gracious to allow me to say this. I would like to just associate myself with Chairwoman Shaheen's comments, Senator Reed's comments, Senator Heinrich's comments. Just when we're taking a look, obviously, at track one, we're looking at I have great concerns, and so I am out of time, and I appreciate the grace, but if you will just associate me with her comments on this and know that it is a concern that I have deeply as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Britt, and thank you both for your testimony this morning and for your service to the country. If there are no further questions, senators may submit additional questions for the subcommittee's official hearing record. We would request that NASA and NSF respond to those within 30 days. Now, the subcommittee stands in recess until June 4th, when we will hold a hearing on the budget request of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Thank you all.